Hello and welcome back to another video. Wishing you all a very happy new year. As I'm making this video, we are now the 1st of January 2025, and what a crazy year 2024 was, and what an even crazier year I suspect 2025 will be. I think it is safe to say that we have seen a lot of craziness taking place in our world since 2020. And it's interesting because when I take the time to look back to all the things that have happened since that time, it's been quite crazy. And one of the main downloads I received in 2020 was Africa Rising. The second message I received was, "It is always darkest before the dawn." And I think we have certainly seen these things taking place when we look at all the craziness that has been happening in Kenya, when we look at the craziness that has been happening across the African continent, when we look at the massive changes that are happening in West Africa in places like Mali and Burkina Faso and Niger, where these African countries are totally taking back their power, something that hasn't been seen in I don't know how many years, but quite a long time. And I think this is a time of great celebration for the African continent. And again, we will continue, when we talk about Africa Rising, what we are seeing happening across the globe is that we are rising in our consciousness. And these were things that were foreseen in many ancient civilizations. But of course, none of us really know what that's going to look like. But if we were to simplify it as much as possible, what is consciousness? Consciousness can also be synonymous with self-awareness, is the ability to know that you exist, to know that you are thinking, to know that you are sitting here on the other side of the screen. And so most of us are engaging with our life either with awareness or without awareness. And this is the problem, because many of us are now today fighting against the system that oppresses us. But we have to remember that for hundreds and hundreds, if not even thousands of years, this system has been in the making. And the system, of course, serves to oppress the majority of people and only benefit a select few people who are at the highest levels of our society. And this is what we have known forever, that a small few people essentially control the rest of the masses. And so what is happening now is that we are at a time where we are taking our power back, because this system has continued to divide and conquer us. And this is why there has been so much separation, and why there has been so much hatred and so much distrust and mistrust and so much lacking of compassion. And it is because the system has been engineered to make us think that the people that we need to be wary of is our fellow man, our fellow brothers and sisters, our fellow compatriots, our fellow neighbors and family members, and so on and so forth. And so because this narrative has been repeated for so many thousands of years, we have started to believe that the people who are oppressing us are each other as opposed to the system itself. But it feels that since 2020, many people are starting to catch on to who the real oppressor is. And, it is not... It is the system. And of course, there are select few people who are involved in the system. And what we don't realize is that each and every one of us human beings on the planet, we are the ones who are essentially upholding the system because of the way we behave and the things that we believe and the actions that we take. And so this is why, when we look at who is really controlling the world, it's not the governments the way we have been taught to believe, but it is the corporations who are controlling everything. And so now we are looking at these globalist corporations, or these globalist organizations, such as people like the UN and the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization, which are the organizations that are essentially deciding and dictating what every human being on the planet should do and how they should live their lives, when nobody has really elected these people and nobody is really in agreement with the system that is being enforced upon us. And so 2020 was really the beginning of when they were starting to implement this Agenda 2030. And this is very much in line with the UN sustainability goals, which is why we have been seeing so much talk of climate change and why they are really pushing climate change. But as I have mentioned in so many of my previous videos, we have to remember that manipulation in all its different forms is the way in which the smaller minority control the larger population. And so we have to remember that everything that is presented to us through the media, through the news, through the education system, through the health system, through all the different systems that have been upheld, and really when we stop to look at each of these individual systems, which of these systems has actually benefited us, and which of these systems have been upgraded in I don't know how many hundreds of years, because they, and when I say they, I talk about the people at the top of, the pyramid essentially, and they want us to believe that they are doing things in our best effort and that all resources are being geared to the positive development of humanity. But I think it is safe to say that when we look back over the last 200 years, life has not really been getting better. In my opinion, life has been getting far worse. And when we look at, things like the development of AI, which they say, oh yeah, this is going to make life so much easier for humanity. But is it really? If we stop and look back to how the world has developed since the time of the internet, has the world really benefited? Okay, yeah, we can talk about how development has been brought to all kinds of places. But again, I'm going to bring this and I'm going to make this a little bit Afrocentric because of the fact that I live here in Kenya and this is my experience. And so we have been living in a world whereby, oh gosh, sorry, I've just lost my train of thought now. And so so we talk about development and, ever since the times of colonization, where they said that they were bringing development to uncivilized and and basically primitive people, but this is just simply not true. This is where what has been happening since the time of colonization, and if we look at colonization, this has happened across the world, and the point of colonization was really to eradicate the belief systems of indigenous people. And how this has been done is through the guise of religion, where we have to remember that this is a spiritual war, and it is all about taking control of our belief systems, because depending on what we believe, this is going to affect the way we behave and the actions that we take in the world. And what is happening now is that since the rise of all these Abrahamic belief systems that have essentially oppressed indigenous people and made them believe that everything about them is wrong and everything about them is primitive. And this is where cultural appropriation comes from, because those people who are not indigenous to the land, whatever country or continent we might be thinking about, those people have systematically oppressed the indigenous ways of life to enforce their Abrahamic belief systems, which essentially keeps people in a constant state of fear. Because the religion of the Abrahamic gods is essentially telling you that you are worthless, that you are not good enough, and that basically God hates you because you are a sinner and you can't do anything right unless you are indirectly or directly choosing to essentially oppress yourself and live a life that is not at all the life that we came here to live. Because remember, we are soul beings having a physical human experience, and the point of what we are here to do at this time, and no one really knows how long this process is going to take, but essentially it is about bringing heaven onto earth. And when people talk about hell and heaven, these are states of consciousness that we experience in this physical world. For example, when you are in joy and when you are in love, you experience heaven. You see colors more brightly. Your taste buds are better. You are happier. You want to share. You want to sing from the rooftops. That can be seen as heaven. But when you are constantly being oppressed and you are stuck in a state of survival and fight or flight because you are constantly being told that you are not good enough and you have to be kept poor by the corporations that rule this world so that they can continue to have slaves to uphold their systems, so that we as consumers can continue to buy stuff that doesn't really benefit us in any way, so that these corporations can continue to have enough money so that they can continue to eradicate nature. And if we take a moment to look back to the indigenous ways of life across the board, whatever country or continent that we're talking about, what was worshipped, the main belief system that these people held was that we must live in harmony with nature, because nature provides everything. Just like the materials we need to build our house come from nature, the food that we eat comes from nature, the medication that we take comes from nature, everything comes from nature. But essentially these corporations, along with the help of mainstream media, and along with the help of the governments, we have essentially, a veil has been put in front of our eyes so that we cannot see the reality. And essentially this is mass brainwashing, because the people who are in power, who we essentially trust, are feeding us the wrong information, making us believe what is not true. And so what is happening now, many people have heard of the Great Awakening. And what is the Great Awakening? Essentially, the Great Awakening is awakening from the slumber, because it's like we have all been in a veil of it's like we have been under a form of hypnotism. We have all been under a state of high suggestibility, where it is so easy for us to be manipulated and controlled. And this is happening through the media, this is happening through EMF frequency, where the technology, when now we're talking about the rise of AI, but the AI systems and programs that we, the public, are seeing and finally being given access to, is just such a minute, such a small fragment of the actual technology that they have access to. When you think about the technology that the military is using, it is way more advanced than anything that we, the people, have access to. And not to forget that people have been inventing all kinds of incredible technology for however long it has been, but a lot of this technology has been bought over by these massive corporations and essentially shelved, so that people don't have access to this technology. Because the fact that we are in 2025 and AI technology is on the rise, but yet, and then we're fighting about all these LGBTQ and all these trans whatever movements, and we're fighting for all of these supposed rights, and yet women in Africa, or women in, say, places like Afghanistan, still don't have any rights. So again, I think what we have to look at as humanity, especially as we move now into 2025, is what as a collective are we choosing to uphold? Because it is, as much as the governments are the ones who are feeding us this information and these programs through the internet and all their different, through music and movies and all the different ways in which we are programmed, religion, education, culture, which is also engineering and changing the way in which we move. But we have to decide where our priorities lie, because we have to remember that this is also a fight for our energy and our attention. Just as I said, it is about consciousness and awareness, and we are essentially being uplifted. Because how is it that today, when we are supposed to be more evolved than people back in the day, and yet we have to write, well, I mean, this goes more so for in America, but that on a hot cup of coffee you have to write "be careful hot," because people are too stupid to realize this and then can come and sue you. I mean, where is the world when you look at the state of education around the world and how stupid people have become? Yet we are more connected and have access to more information at our fingertips for less money than we have ever had to pay before, and yet people are stupider than they have ever been in the past. We have to realize that something very strange is ongoing. And it is like humanity are underneath some kind of mass psychosis, where everyone is under some kind of hive mind, where nobody can really think for themselves. And those people who do think for themselves are dubbed conspiracy theorist, or dubbed crazy, or dubbed whatever wording they want to use. But really, if we look at, these conspiracy theories, these are the people who are actually checking the facts, as opposed to the rest of the people who want to just accept at face value. And yeah, I remember when I went to university, I was told one must always critically think, one must always look further than what is presented. You must have arguments for what is being presented to you. And when we see that so many people since 2020, so much information is being suppressed under the guise of false information, because, well, when we start to censor information, it must mean that there is something that people don't want us to see. And the amount of censoring that has been happening since 2020 is just really quite crazy. And so the way we take back our power, and it's interesting because 2024 was an 8 year, 8 being the number of power, 8 being the number of karma. It is safe to say that we have seen a lot of the masses essentially taking their power back from the select few. And how we do this is by not complying. Yes, it is good to protest, but the number one way we can stop this agenda from coming out is by simply choosing not to police one another, choosing not to live in fear. Because what these people understand is that when we are in fear, we literally cannot think properly. And that is essentially what can be compared to hell, when you are in a constant state of fear. And this is the thing, is when you are kept in a constant state of fear, your mental programming, your mind, your mental abilities, your ability to think logically and rationally literally go out the window. When you are kept in fear, your body is kept in fight or flight, keeping you in a state of survival, essentially making you sick. It is compromising your immune system, it is compromising your health, your mental health, it is compromising your emotional health, it is compromising your spiritual health, it is compromising your health in all ways. And if we look since 2020, what has been the biggest thing that we have been fighting is our health. Because when we are not healthy people, we literally cannot function. We are kept in a state of hell where we literally feel that we cannot do anything. Think about how you are when you're sick. All you want to do is lie in bed until you feel better. But what if you don't feel better? Because again, the pharmaceuticals that you're being sold are actually making you sicker. And this is why we have to look at returning back to our indigenous ways of life, where there was more connection, especially today when I look at Kenya and when I look at how Kenya used to be just 20 years ago. It is, to me, totally baffling and totally surprising how the Kenyan culture, or the African way of life, and of course here in Kenya with our 42 different tribes, there is so much different culture, but how this culture has been totally eradicated to choose the Western ideologies and the Western ways of life. But are the Western ways of life really working? I don't think it is, because when you look at how their old people are thrown into homes and how there's so much individualism, and how really, when you look at the number of Europeans who are moving to Africa, you have to question, why are they leaving the so-called promised land to come to Africa, where we hold no resources and we hold nothing? It's because they know what you don't know. And for somebody who, grew up in Kenya, lived in Europe, only to come back, because what most people don't realize is, especially for the Africans, they keep selling you this dream to make you believe that life is better on that other side. But the only reason that they sell you that dream is so that you can become a slave to their system and do all the jobs that the Europeans or the Americans or wherever in this first world that they don't want to do. So essentially, the melanated, and no matter how little or much melanin you have, you are the melanated, and you are the ones who are here to uphold this system that only benefits a few select people, essentially the Caucasians, though even they're being fucked over by the system, let's be honest. But they benefit more so than we do because of their white privilege. And these are conversations that we need to have. These are conversations that need to be discussed so that we can get out of these prisons, because all this political correctness and all these things that are taboo and all these things that are happening blatantly in the world around us and in society, but we're not allowed to talk about them because they're uncomfortable or because they question the mainstream narrative. But this is where we are going to become free of the system, is about talking about all of these things that are not serving us. The fact that women and men have become so promiscuous, relationships are falling apart, people no longer want to have children, or the people who do want to have children are not correctly parenting their children because they are kept in a state of survival and essentially letting iPads and the internet raise their children and keep them busy. And this is where we're seeing a lot of brain rot coming up, where children are becoming stupider. And how many teachers are quitting in the education system because these younger children, well, they essentially cannot be taught because they have no discipline and they have no attention span, and they refuse to listen to, to do what they're being told because, the teachers try and tell them. And of course, these are a lot of things that are more so prevalent in the Western world, but these things are already happening here on the African continent. And the only way that we can stop it is by taking back our ethics, taking back our morals. Just because everyone in the world out there decides that these are okay to do these things, it doesn't make it okay for us. And this is why when I heard that saying, Africa rising, it was because Africa is really at the center of it all. We are going through a second round of colonization, and unless we wake up and take a stand and stop it and refuse to give our energy and refuse to comply to the things that do not serve us, well, we are headed in a very, very negative direction. And this is why, with now the year 2025 being the year of 9, remember 9 in numerology is a number of completion. So we had the year of 8 where we were being given the opportunity to take our power back. And we have seen with a lot of the information, because one of the ways in which we take our power back, remember they say knowledge is power. And this is why we have been seeing since 2020 a lot of knowledge that has been hidden from us is coming up to the surface so that we can take back our power, because those people who hold no knowledge hold no power, because they can be manipulated because they simply don't know. So we have been given the opportunity to build our knowledge base so that we can take back our power. And this is why the universe, the Most High, whatever you want to call it, has been dropping seeds of knowledge. And nowadays, if you still want to think that a lot of these things are conspiracy theories, then you are the problem. Because evil does not, the way evil prevails is for good men to stand by and do nothing. So those people who still don't want to take part and say, oh, no, I'm not getting involved, I'm sorry to let you know that you are part of the problem and you are part of the oppressors, allowing this oppression to take place because you are not fighting against it and you are not saying no. So the easiest way that we can take back our power, and again, as I said, 9 is a year of completion. It is many cycles are ending. Personal cycles are ending, collective cycles are ending, and we are being given the opportunity to take back our power and to change the direction of humanity's future on an individual level as well as a collective level. And as I have said, we have moved into the age of Aquarius, and the age of Aquarius is more about the we than the me. And so when we realize that everything that me does will always have an impact on what happens to we have to start realizing that we do hold mass power, more so than we realize. And it is time that we start using our power for things that will elevate the collective as opposed to continue to bringing it down. Because if you are not choosing a stance, if you are not choosing to be on the stance, on the side of the group that is saying, no, we will not comply to this matrix system, then you are unfortunately an agent of this matrix system, and you don't realize that you are unconsciously upholding the system. And you might be someone who is complaining about the system, but yet you are the one who upholds it, consciously or unconsciously. But now what is happening is that all the things that have been done unconsciously as a result of all the trauma and negative experiences that people have experienced, that have not had an ability to heal, because as I've said many, many times, hurt people hurt people. And so we are being given an opportunity to no longer be those hurt people who hurt other people. Because when we heal all of our shit, then we no longer need to hurt other people, because we are no longer in that state of hurt. So to give you some context here, I have pulled some cards. Let's see what the cards say to guide us here for this year ahead. So the first card we have is Solar Light Upgrade, Solar Plexus Chakra, Inner Fire, Willpower. Yes, the Solar Plexus Chakra sits in the area of our solar plexus and essentially is the energetic center that controls our personal power and our will. So one of the ways in which we are being manipulated is by is by is by these powers that are falling, powers that manipulate the way we use our free will. So essentially they will tell you some beautiful story, so you say, oh yeah, I'm going to donate some money to that, only to realize that that money that we are donating is being used for other kinds of nefarious purposes. So this is why let 2025 be the year where you really develop that spirit of discernment to really start to question everything that you are presented. So really it is about allowing that fire of your will to start burning once again, allowing your willpower to be used for you and not be manipulated against you. And again, remember, when we have fire, when we have passion, we are capable of doing incredible things. But if you are kept in a state of submission and oppression and survival and fight or flight, then you don't have that fire, you don't have that power to go out there and do the things that you want to do. And especially if the system is constantly repeating to you, you're not good enough, you don't have what it takes, you are a failure. Essentially, that little voice in our head is the voice, excuse me, is the voice of the system that is constantly telling you, you suck, you're not good enough, you don't have what it takes. In order to get there, you need to buy this, and you need to do this, and you need to be more like this, essentially convincing us to be totally wrong. And really, when we look at this, it is a fight between divinity and no divinity. And some people want to call this Satan or Lucifer or whatever it is, but really we can see that the system in which we live is a deeply Luciferian system. It is a system which is deeply parasitic. And when you look at a parasite, what is a parasite? A parasite essentially needs to feed off of you, the host, in order to keep living. And that is what the system does. It continues to feed off of our energy. Every single one of us, however 8 billion people on this planet, it is continuously sucking our energy so that it continues to exist. But what if we were to just simply stop giving our energy to these things, stop giving our energy to musicians who sing about all kinds of horrific things, stop giving our energy to the movies that are constantly telling us that we're not good enough, stop giving our energy to the corporations who sell us food that is totally fake and full of all kinds of chemicals that is slowly killing us. Stop giving our energy to the health system, which is continuing to give us the wrong medication and misdiagnose us so that they can continue making money. We have to take back our power. Take control of your health. Remember, preventative health is better than whatever the alternative is. But if you are eating healthy, if you are looking after your mental health, if you are making sure that you are surrounded by things that make you feel good, you will, by a fact, just not get so sick. Take control of your education. Don't just allow what the school system is educating your children. Educate your children on the things that you know you didn't receive through the education system. Teach your children, teach your colleagues. Really, it is about taking our power back. The next card we have is Emerald Tablet of Activation, Cosmic Ordering, Divine Alchemy, Conscious Manifesting. Yes, remember, beautiful people, that we create. We are all manifesting. I'm sure many of you have heard about the law of attraction. The one thing that they don't tell you about the law of attraction is that you have to take action on the things that you desire. And so we are all consciously or unconsciously, many of us unconsciously, manifesting this system in which we are trying to get out of because of the thoughts, because of our actions, because of our beliefs. So let 2025 be the year where you go on a deep dive to start questioning, why do I do the things I do? Why do I believe the things that I believe? Why do I act the way that I act? Because so many people are so quick to throw away their responsibility and blame it on everything and everyone else, when really we are the ones who have full responsibility for everything. There is a cosmic ordering that is taking place, and the way this cosmic ordering takes place is through each and every one of us individuals taking our power back, choosing to only give our energies to things that benefit us individually, but also the collective. Why do we continue to buy plastic? Of course, yes, the corporations are all, selling us these things, and we think, oh, well, they don't give us any other options, so this is all we're left with. But the reason that we do things is because of convenience. But if we took a little bit more time to actually go and do more so that we didn't have to buy these things that are convenient, essentially these corporations would have to change the way they do things. So remember, the governments, they work for the people, but we have forgotten, we have given all the power to the government, so now the governments are in control. It is about taking back that power. Divine alchemy is about transmuting heavy energies and turning them into something better. So we are all living through very difficult and heavy energies, and we are being asked as a collective, as well as on an individual level, to transmute these energies, take our pain and turn them into something beautiful. The next card we have is Lemurian Seed Codes, embracing sensitivity, uniqueness, living with grace. And this purple energy really is all about activation of the higher crown and also of our first eye energy centers. And it's funny because we live in a world where sensitivity is seen as a weakness. But if we were all more sensitive to each other's needs, perhaps we wouldn't all be here trying to suck everybody's energies and trying to essentially oppress each other so that we could get ahead. If we were all to be more compassionate and all more kind and all more loving, and rather than, if somebody is in a bad mood and says something mean to us, rather than shouting back at them and being even meaner, what if we were to stop and be like, hey, what's going on? Maybe I can listen. Maybe I can help. Maybe you just need a hug. But because we are all walking around with so much trauma inside of us and so much pent up shit and so much anger and so much suppressed emotions, if we were just to embrace our uniqueness as opposed to all trying to live in the same box, which doesn't work because this is how we bring in so much comparisonitis. But we're not supposed to compare one another because we are all unique. We are all different. We all came here with a unique set of gifts that we are supposed to share with one another. We are all supposed to learn from one another. But the problem is that we are learning from a very small select group of people who are teaching us absolute nonsense. So the next card we have is 8th House Mystery, and the numerology here is 46. Bringing it to an 11, which is a master number, which is the number of spirituality. Essentially, it is the archetype of the high priestess. It is about using our intuitive consciousness, using the non-tangible aspects of ourselves. Again, we forget that everything starts in the mind, but the mind is not the brain. And also our intuition plays an effect on our mind. And so it is about going into the mysteries of the 8th house. And so it's interesting because in astrology, the 8th house is essentially the house of death, sex, and taxes. It is the house of everything that is hidden underneath the surface. It is really the house that is dominated by Pluto. Pluto, the planet of death and rebirth. And so really we can look at the 8th house as all those taboos: sex, taxes, money, religion, all these things that we don't want to talk about. These are all of the things that are coming to light. These are all of the things that are coming to the surface. All that shit that has been swept underneath the carpet because we don't want to deal with it. We don't want to think about it. We just want to pretend that it's not happening. And even though all of these things are pervading our society and perverting our society, we don't want to talk about them. Why? Because we have all been conditioned to look at these things as being right. But it is not right. Just because the majority of people jump onto the bandwagon doesn't make it right. So are you going to be a sheep, or are you going to stand up for divinity, for what is good and true and what serves the majority of humanity? So the next card we have here is 45 numerology, bringing it back to a 9. So we had 46 coming back to 45. So it's like we are going backwards. We have to go backwards to go forward. Yes, we have to go back and look at all the things in our past that have not worked out, which have led us here to this moment in the present, which is definitely not working. So the 7th house is about relationships. Yes, if we look into the 8th house, if we look into the mysteries of ourselves, all these things, again, questioning, why do I do the things I do? Why do I say the things I do? Why do I act the way I do? Why do I believe the things I do? This will strengthen our relationships. And as one of the main traits of Aquarius energy is about It is about using our power to do something that will benefit the collective. And, one of the things that I've always found is the most powerful things that, tools that we have access to in this world is relationships. We are being asked to be more collaborative in our energy, strengthen our relationships, because one of the main reasons why shit has gone as bad as it has in the world today is because our relationships have fallen apart. And I can really say that the number one reason why human relationships have fallen apart and are not as strong as they once were was because of technology, is because of the internet. And now with the rise of AI, already human relationships are not very good. This is just going to make things worse. Do we really want a computer to be telling us how to live our lives? I don't think so. And when we see the rise of, especially I think it's like in Asia, where now we're seeing the rise of these like very kind of humanoid robots, where essentially many men are now starting to engage in relationships with robots as opposed to real live human women. And that's because, well, the relationships between man and woman have really fallen apart. The fact that we say in today's world that man and women cannot be friends, it's because of all the sexual perversion that has taken over. And so this is the problem. There has been an over-sexualization between relationships between man and woman, and even just between women and man. There's so much competition between us. And so we really have to strengthen our relationships within our family. And it's funny because there's a lot of shit that's happening in families. And I've always said, it seems that the reason why there's so much shit in families is because people seem to think that, oh, just because we're related by blood, I don't need to respect you and treat you like a human being. That's the problem. We need to really start to question, where have our relationships gone wrong and why have they gone so wrong and why are they going to get worse, is because we are letting technology take control of our relationships. We no longer know how to communicate because we don't know how to be authentic. We don't know how to be empathetic. We don't know how to be vulnerable. And these are things that we're really, really needing. These were traits that made humanity so much stronger than they are today. And then the next card we have here is third house communication. The numerology here is a 5. 5 is all about change. We are going to continue seeing, we've been seeing a lot of change taking place since 2020, and I think we have seen so much more change taking place. I mean, when we look at now all this UAP activity that is happening in America, and how just before all this, sort of this drone phenomenon started taking place, we had, Congress in America was talking about all this UAP. And as I've spoken about, we use one of the main ways in which we are being brainwashed and manipulated is through magic. And what most people, how magic is portrayed through movies is not really what magic is about. And magic is really about planting a seed and help and doing whatever is necessary so that you start to believe that thing. Because once that belief is anchored, all your thoughts and your actions serve to strengthen that belief system. And this is what is happening. If we look at movies, it's so crazy how it is becoming more and more difficult to distinguish between movies and reality, because when you look at all these movie plots and how they're supposed to be fictional plots, but then they bring in real life entities. So you might have a movie about some kind of, some kind of thriller where there's maybe some kind of like plot to create something negative. And so this is all supposed to be very fictional, but then they bring in, oh, the UN is included in this movie, or, like the New York Police Department. And so if you're using a fictional movie plot, but you're bringing in real life aspects, it starts to make it very difficult. And it's crazy how when you tell people about some of the crazy shit that's happening in the world, they'll then say, oh, no, that only happens in the movies. And why do they say that only happens in the movies? Because these plots of things that are happening in reality in our world have been used in the movie plots, because they also have to tell us what they're doing based on the spiritual laws. The powers that are falling have to tell us what they are up to so that we can engage in it with our own free will. And so even if they lie to us about what they're doing and they omit, people will say, oh no, I didn't lie, I just omitted certain information. I'm sorry, omitting the truth is also just lying. And so what they do is they omit or they change a lot of the facts so that we're like, oh yeah, I buy this. I'm gonna buy this product or whatever it is, but they're all just fucking lying to us. And so we are at a time of change. And so here, this card communication is, we are, the way they communicate to us is also brainwashing us, and also distorting the way we look at the world. And so we have to be very, very careful of how we are being communicated to, because also with magic, if you think about someone who is performing magic, it's like they'll keep your attention over here so that something is happening over there. Just like with everything happening now, is like they've been keeping our attention on Diddy so that we're not paying attention to what is really going on. So whenever you see something that is being communicated on a mass level and being pushed through the media, this is just another form of distraction. It's like, pay attention here so that they can do whatever they want to do over here, and no one is paying attention, so nobody can get in their way. So we have to be very, very aware now of what is being communicated. What communication are we just absorbing and accepting? Being very, very mindful. So when you watch a movie, question, what are they trying to convince me of here? I'm sure many of you have heard of this predictive programming, and all this predictive programming. How many movies have come out with same plots of what is happening in our physical reality today? This is because they were preparing you for what was to come, slowly making you comfortable with what is to come. So the next card we have is Nightmare. Yes, all of these things that they have been slowly, when you look at The Simpsons and all the things that they predicted, it's not that they're predicting the future, it's that they're controlling the future. And the future that they have been controlling and leading us towards is one of a nightmare. And here the card says, caught in an unwanted reality, believing in the small voice, feeling powerless, fear, constriction, everything that is being communicated to us is essentially keeping us in this nightmare. Because think about it, all those little voices that we hear in our head, you're not good enough, you don't have what it takes, you're useless, you're worthless, you won't be able to move forward. Everything around us is constantly sending us that message. And so we have to stop. If someone continues to tell you something, if you don't know yourself and someone continues to tell you something about yourself, you're going to eventually believe it. But if you know who you are and you know your power and you know how much power you hold, even if someone comes and tells you this, you're just going to be like, okay, yeah, whatever. That's just your opinion, and I don't really give a shit about your opinion. And that is what we are being called to get. We are all being called to get to that point where we no longer care about what this external system is feeding us and telling us about ourselves, because we know who we are, and we know that we are not useless and worthless and not good enough. It is just not true. And all these fears, all these things that keep us powerless, it is these belief systems that have been poured into you from generations, because our parents pass their fears onto us, their parents pass their fears onto them, and so on and so forth. So especially if you have children, you need to get control of your fears and ask, what fears am I unconsciously passing on to my children? Because those fears are limiting their abilities in the future. Think about all the areas in which you have fear. That is a limitation that is placed upon your life. But a lot of the fears, when we hold these fears in our head, they're so much more powerful than when we take them out, when we express them, when we share them, when we make, when you say, oh, I'm afraid of this happening. A lot of the time, the fears that we have are not even real. These are things that we are projecting into the future. Oh, I'm fearful I'll never succeed. But you've succeeded until now. You're okay. Things always have a tendency of working out. The next card we have here is Snake Medicine. Let go of your past. Growth, vulnerability, sensitization. And it's really interesting because when I look at this Nightmare card and how dark it is, and then when you look at this card here, what it really makes me think of is the Garden of Eden story, when the serpent essentially came and tricked Eve into eating the fruit of knowledge. And really what we can, we can look at this in that the system, which can be, as I've said, the Luciferian system, the snake is connected to the Luciferian system. And so the snake, at least in not that the snake is negative, the snake actually represents death and rebirth. You know, it is the changing of your skin. It is becoming somebody new. And so do not be tricked into doing things that you do not want to do. It is about letting go of your past, because when you hold on to the pains of your past, they are continuing to control you in the present moment. So let's say you have a fear of drowning for whatever reason. Maybe your grandmother or great grandmother died, or whatever. So you have a fear of drowning, and you have the opportunity to go on this incredible, you know, maybe you get offered this job to go and work on this luxury cruise, and it's a great job, it's great pay, but you're like, no, I'm not going to do that job because I have a fear of drowning. Are you going to drown when you're on the ship? No. Okay, yeah. Is there a possibility that the ship drowns? Yes, there is a possibility, but there's also a possibility that I fall and stub my toe and fall over and crack my head open. Is that stopping me from walking? No. So we cannot let our fears hold us back any longer. It is a time of growth. As I said, it is a time of vulnerability, sensitization. This is the same card that we had here. Being allowed to be vulnerable, sharing your fears, because when we keep our fears internal, we don't get support. But there are people who do want to support us in getting over our fears. So when you share your fears with the people who love and support you, then they will also love and support you to get through those fears. The next card we have is focal point. Hocus pocus focus. Select and hold on. Augmentation. Yes, remember, your power, your energy, your power goes where your energy goes, or attention. There's a saying that goes, attention flows where your energy goes. So remember, all these ways in which they manipulate and control us is by keeping our energy in certain areas. When they're keeping our energy focused on certain areas, we can't be paying attention to all kinds of other things, and we don't know in which ways we are being manipulated. What most people don't know is that using the colors and the sounds and certain wording that they use that we see in movies and on the news and all of these kinds of things, we're actually being put into a form of hypnotism that makes us very easy. We are then placed into a very highly suggested state. So somebody tells you to do, so if you've just watched something and somebody tells you to do this, then you're more likely to do it. And so this is how they're controlling us. So what we have to focus on this year is we have to be very aware on what we are putting our energy in. If there are certain things that you want to grow this year, then it is important that you put all your energy into those things. If you have, if one of the things that you want to see growing this year are your finances, then you have to do everything in your power to focus on building your finances. You can't be lazy, and you can't, you have to be a go-getter, and you have to go out there and you have to find ways in which you can build your finances. Or if you're trying to improve your health, then you actually have to focus on building your health. You can't say, oh yeah, I'm going to focus on building my health, and then 2 days later you're eating 5 tons of, sugar. That's just not the way it works. So many people get skewed, and it's uncomfortable when you're trying to build a new habit and you're having difficulty, because a lot of stuff will come up. But it is about sitting with that discomfort. It is about allowing the discomfort to bring you information to help you understand, what have you been masking, what have you been running away from, because most of us are running away from our problems, wanting to ignore them or pretend that they're not happening, and then we develop all these different coping mechanisms to help us cope. But these coping mechanisms are certainly not helping us. So the next card we have, Druid. Hold the space. Yes, find a space in which you feel comfortable this year and hold it. How can you build a space that has more peace and serenity and calm? And what do you need to do to feel more at ease? Since 2020, it's crazy, but I have almost totally separated myself from society, because I realized one of my biggest tendencies that I really needed to work on, that was really holding me back, was that I was such a people pleaser. such a people pleaser. And I was so unhappy, and I got to the point where I started resenting people, and no one was forcing me to be a people pleaser. I was doing this out of my own free will and volition, but I had to really separate from a lot of people because I realized the various tendencies that I had that allowed people to constantly be taking from me, until I learned how to develop really strong boundaries. And so sometimes you have to do uncomfortable things. It's like somebody who's trying to overcome an addiction. You're not going to go to the bar every day if you're trying to stop drinking alcohol. So if one of your biggest difficulties is is not being able to say no to people, then stay away from people for a while. Only stay with the people who you can say no to, who are going to help you to build. The next card we have is Ride the Waves, Life Lessons and Growth. You will get through this, absolutely. Ride this wave. We have been seeing since 2020, many of us have been experiencing many challenging life lessons. We have been experiencing a lot of growth, and growth is not always easy. And I always like to talk about the comfort zone, because when we are in our comfort zone, we are not growing. And remember, the main point of why your soul chose to incarnate on this planet at this time was so that you can grow. It is all about evolving and growing and becoming better and experiencing new facets of yourself. But if you are always stuck in your comfort zone and not wanting to try new things and not wanting to do anything differently and not wanting to change, then you are not growing, you are stagnating. And sometimes the universe will throw these challenging experiences at us so that we are forced to grow, we are forced to evolve. And that is what is happening. So much of humanity have become complacent. So much of humanity have become stuck in their comfort zone and allowing all of this shit to happen. But when we start being exposed to different challenges, then we have to change. Something has to shift. And that is what is happening. We are all being faced with different challenges so that we can evolve and we can grow and we can change and we can move into a better state of being. And last but not least, we have Mintakan, longing for home, belonging, the original light workers. And there are so many of us on this planet that are longing for home. We're longing for the sense of belonging. But if you think about it, belonging is we are longing to be. Remember, we are human beings. We are not human doings. And so many of us have been doing, keeping us stuck in fight, flight, freeze, keeping us stuck in this endless giving. But remember, we are as much to give as we are to receive. So if you are not receiving from others, it means that first of all, you are giving too much. And most of us who are light workers, who are here to help humanity come into this information, we chose to take this journey of healing before the majority of the collective, first of all to transmute these very heavy energies, but also to be there as a pillar of light for those who are moving through the darkness, to show them what happens when we go through that healing journey, to show them what happens when we let go of being so obsessed with this material realm and obsessed with money. Because it is crazy how so many of us, what we are longing, as human beings, we are all part of one collective and we are all longing for connection and creativity. But the reason that we are not connected and we are not in a collective is because we are also focused on me. Everything is about me. And why is everything about me? Because I will do anything to get money. I will do anything to get ahead. Because remember, we are upholding this parasitic system which feeds on us in order to get ahead. So we are all being fed on. We are all feeding on each other to make sure that this system continues to uphold. So we are all longing to be connected once again. When we look at how humanity was so much more connected before, there was less of this divide and conquer tactics. There was less of the separation, and all the separation that is happening on gender lines, on racial lines, on national lines, on I don't know, on how much money you have lines. Everything is there to control and separate. But we are all the same. We all want to experience love, and we all want to experience beauty and compassion, and we all want to feel supported, and we all want to feel joy, and we all want to feel peace. Deep down at the core of every single one of us human beings, we all want to experience the same thing. But the only way that we can experience that is by supporting one another, is by allowing ourselves to experience that and not stopping others from experiencing it either. Let 2025 be the year in which we stop allowing ourselves to be used in oppressing one another so that the system can continue to live. What if this is the year where you decide to be more caring, where you decide to be more compassionate, where you start by doing that with yourself? Because the reason that we cannot do this for others is because we lack these things within ourselves. So I certainly hope that this message will give you something to think about for the year to come. Remember that this is a year of completing cycles. What cycles do you want to put to an end? What cycles are you ready to put to bed? What are you ready to end so that something new can be birthed? So I wish you all a wonderful start to the year. I ask that you please like and share this video with anyone who you feel might resonate with it. And I would love to hear from you as to what cycles you are choosing to end. What are you choosing to end this year? How are you choosing to bring more love and compassion into your world? And how are you choosing to share this with more people around you? So much love to you all, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.